Hi, Marissa.
Hey, everybody. It's great to see you. Okay, so as we're starting to record this, this recording, of course, and this whole meeting is possible because of the support that the Quattrone Center for the Fair Administration of Justice receives through the Bureau of Justice Administration as the technical training assistance provider for both the Upholding the Rule of Law grant and the Wrongful Convictions Review grant. This program was originally set up just for the grantees under that program, but because of the very positive response we've been getting and have been getting, we've opened this up with BJA's permission to any organization, lawyers that are doing post-conviction investigation and litigation. This monthly meeting allows people who are receiving funds under the grant, as well as anybody involved in litigation and investigation, to come together in a community to kind of share ideas and get feedback and thoughts on issues they may be having. But we also present topics of importance for people who are doing litigation and investigation work in post-conviction work. So we've covered such issues as false confessions, working with data, we're hearing from victims and how to incorporate victims' voices in post-litigation and other topics. As always, I ask people, if you have a topic that's of interest to you that you'd like to hear from, to please let me know. We'll be happy to do this. These meetings happen the second Wednesday of the month from 2 to 3:15 on this online platform. So coming up, we have next month in February, we should be, I think, if everything falls right, Dr. Gary David, who's a professor and specialist in sociology, linguistics, and design, will be talking with us about how to best communicate with people who are pro se defendants or otherwise unrepresented or incarcerated individuals to keep our communications clear and easy for them to follow. And then in March and April, we'll be having kind of a two-part DNA presentation, coming up by Don Boswell from Houston. So we'll be covering both kind of DNA 101 and then getting into mixture issues as well, and how those cases are looked at in terms of what the DNA can do, what it means, and how to interpret the results. So with all of that, I am going to go ahead, and what I'd like to do, we have a bunch of folks on the call. There's about 50 of us so far. So I think just kind of a quick hi and who you are, where you're from would be super. And if you have particular issues that you would like to see addressed either today or in future webinars, please just let me know. You can just chat me through the chat function here on Zoom. And then after that, we will be happy to introduce Chief Brooks and get started with today. So I'm just going to start, I guess I'll just call through in my Brady Bunch grid here. Erica, nice to see you. You're first up.
Hi, Erica Nichols-Cook. I run the Wrongful Conviction Division for the Iowa State Public Defender, and we just started a new grant this month.
Super. Andrea Miller.
Hi, everyone. My name is Andrea Miller. I am the legal director of the Oklahoma Innocence Project at Oklahoma City University School of Law. We're one of the smaller projects in the nation, but hopefully growing now. So it's nice to be here. It's nice to see everybody.
Great. Jasmine Harris.
Hi, good morning. This is Jasmine Harris. I'm with the California Innocence Project down in San Diego, and I work as part of the California Innocence Coalition with these two other innocence projects in the state, Northern California Innocence Project and Loyola Project for the Innocent. And I see they're on the call here as well.
Paula Mitchell.
Hi, that's me. I'm the legal director at the Loyola Law School Project for the Innocent in Los Angeles, and it's nice to see you all.
The marvelous and amazing Marla.
Hi, everybody. I'm Marla Mitchell-Sisson. You may not know, but I'm no longer the director at the Cooley Innocence Project of Council. And I don't know if our new director's on, Tracy, but good to see everybody.
Shalom.
Hi.
Nope, you need to unmute there. And if everybody else could mute while you're not speaking so we don't get the background noise, that would be great.
I'm an attorney for the Conviction Integrity Unit, Judicial Circuit, Orange and Osceola, Florida.
Jessica?
Well, maybe I'll join them sometime.
Wasserman, sorry.
Hi, sorry. I'm Jessica Wasserman. I'm with the Conviction Integrity Unit in Cook County in Chicago, specifically in the DNA unit.
Great. C. Rodriguez? actually reminds me, if everybody could rename themselves, please, with your name and your unit, that would be great.
Hi, my name is Clara Rodriguez. I work for the Conviction Review Unit in New Jersey.
Weinkauf.
Hi, my name is Kevin Weinkauf. I'm a lieutenant with the New Jersey Office of the Attorney General.
Shawnee Ziegler.
Yes, I'm Shawnee. I work with the Arizona Justice Project.
Staffordese.
Hi, I'm Thalia Stavridis. I'm an assistant district attorney with the Suffolk County, New York District Attorney's Office, and I'm assigned to its Conviction Integrity Bureau.
Thank you. Nancy.
I've only left them there before.
Hello, sorry, having technical difficulties today. Nancy Ducey, I'm the director of the Conviction Integrity Unit in Cook County, Illinois, which is outside of Chicago, or it's Chicago.
Great. Jean. Okay, the full last name, but begins with a K.
Oh, good afternoon. I work for the Conviction Integrity Unit in Cook County in Chicago.
And Keon and
Hey, Keon Ducey, Minnesota Attorney General's Office. We just got our Conviction Review Unit up and running.
yay, David Voigt.
Yeah, hi, I'm David Voigt, also with Minnesota Attorney General's Office, and we just got our grant together with the Great North Innocence Project, which covers Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota. And as Keon said, we're just now getting it put together.
Great. Rachel Gran.
Hi, I'm Rachel Gran. I was with Essex Prosecutors for about 25 years, and I am now with the New Jersey AG Conviction Review Unit.
Joyce. We'll skip to Gina Savini.
Hi, I'm Gina Savini. I'm an assistant state's attorney in the Conviction Integrity Unit in Cook County.
Great. And Lisa Kavanaugh.
Hi, I am the director of the Innocence Program at CPCS, which is the Public Defender's Office in Massachusetts.
Great. Jim Mayer.
Hi, I'm Jim Mayer. I'm staff attorney at the Great North Innocence Project, based in Minneapolis, Minnesota, working with Keon and David, who you just heard from at the Minnesota AG's office on our brand new CRU.
Great. And Bryn Kervin.
Hi, I'm Bryn Kervin. I'm a deputy district attorney in San Diego County. I'm the director of our Conviction and Newly Sentence Review Unit. I'm happy to see a lot of familiar faces. So good to be here. Thank you.
Great. Risa Gerson.
Hi, sorry, I had to unmute myself. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Risa Gerson from the Bronx County District Attorney's Office, Conviction Integrity Unit in New York City.
And it says Baltimore City.
New York City.
No, I'm sorry. Thank you, Risa. Oh. Next is Baltimore City.
Oh, hi. I thought I was supposed to rename myself.
Oh, Lauren, hi.
Hi, how are you? Lauren Lipscomb, Baltimore City State's Attorney's Office, Conviction Integrity Unit Chief.
Next, Claire Gilbert.
Hi, something's wrong with my camera today, but my name is Claire Gilbert, and I'm the executive director at the Georgia Innocence Project.
And Judge Carolyn Murray.
Hi, I'm Carolyn Murray. I'm with the State Attorney General's Office Conviction Review Unit in New Jersey.
Adele? Bernhard, oh, you're on mute, Adele.
I muted myself. And I wanted to say, Marissa, you can mute everybody. You have the power. You've got the power as the host. So if
True
there's
that.
feedback, it might make sense to mute everybody. I'm Adele Bernard at the New York Law School Post-Conviction Innocence Clinic. And I'm working with Thalia, who introduced herself a little earlier, and also on a particular matter with Risa, who just said hello. So lots of familiar faces.
Great. Sarah DeSimone.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Sarah DeSimone. I'm the director of the Conviction Integrity Unit in Middlesex County in Massachusetts, which is across the river from Boston and the Cambridge, Lowell, a large area in Massachusetts. I work directly with Lisa Kavanaugh, who I see on here as well, on the Innocence Program, and I'm a counterpart in the Conviction Integrity Unit.
Great. Patrick Gilbert.
Hi, I'm Patrick Gilbert. I'm the chief of the Prosecution Integrity Unit at the Wycomico County State's Attorney's Office. We're on the eastern shore of Maryland, and we are brand new.
Lindsay Herf.
Hello, sorry, I was muted. Lindsay Herf, director at the Arizona Justice Project, and working with Shawnee Ziegler, who was on just a moment ago.
Kathleen DeWald.
Hi, I'm Kathleen DeWald. I'm an assistant state's attorney also in Cook County in Chicago, and I'm part of the Conviction Integrity Unit.
And Lisa Lazari from Pennsylvania.
Good afternoon. I'm Lisa Lazari-Strazier, Chief Deputy of the Conviction Integrity Section for the Pennsylvania Attorney General's Office. Nice to be here.
Sunny.
Hi, I'm Sunny Eaton. I'm the director of the Conviction Review Unit for the Nashville, Tennessee District Attorney's Office.
And Ariel.
Hi, sorry, I was on mute. Hi, I'm Ariel Denby-Berger. I am the head of the Conviction Review Unit for Broward County, Fort Lauderdale, Florida. You called Joyce earlier. Joyce is my new investigator.
Oh, great. Okay.
Yes, so she was on mute, and we're just glad to be here. So thank you.
Of course. Michael Zapan.
Hi, I'm Mike Zapan. I work at the Cooley Innocent Project with Marla, and I'm a staff attorney there.
Todd Freeze.
Hi all, I'm Todd Freeze. I'm the Associate Director at the Northern California Innocence Project and happy to be here.
Summer.
Hi, I'm Summer Farrar. I'm the project manager at the Midwest Innocence Project in Kansas City.
Kelly Fleming.
I'm Kelly. I am a staff attorney with the Northern California Innocence Project.
Great. Megan?
Hi, everyone. I'm Megan Davies. I'm the executive director of Innocence Delaware. I've been in the role for under a year, so we're fairly new to all this, but nice seeing you all.
And Megan Beth?
Yep. Hi, I'm Megan Beth Richardson. I'm with the Michigan Innocence Clinic at U of M Law School, so in Ann Arbor. It's great to see everyone.
Lauren Ross.
Hi, everyone. I'm Lauren Rossman. I'm a staff attorney at the Boston College Innocence Program, and I'm really excited to be here. Thank you.
Val Newman.
Hi, I'm Valerie Newman. I am the director of the Wayne County in Michigan, the Wayne County Prosecutors Conviction Integrity Unit. Marissa, great job. This is most people ever on a meeting.
Yeah.
I've seen Bill's presentation at least twice, but I still am here to support the cause. And just want to say, if anyone has any thoughts, especially the newer CIU people, I'm always happy to be a resource.
Thanks, Val. Missy O'Connor, I hope. Oops, the microphone's not coming through.
How's that? Sorry.
That's better.
It's lunchtime for my kids. I was trying to, but Missy O'Connell, I'm one of the staff attorneys with the Northern California Innocence Project, and I work with Jasmine and Paula and Nikki on the policy efforts for California.
Great. Nikki?
Hi, I'm Nikki. I'm a staff attorney at Loyola Project for the Innocent in Los Angeles.
Great. Oh, I just lost. Okay, Blair Johnson.
Hi, I'm Blair Johnson. I am an investigator at the Midwest Innocence Project in Kansas City.
And Sarah Carlo.
Hi, everyone. I'm Sarah Carlo. I'm a staff attorney with the Boston College Innocence Program.
Jana Robinson.
Hi, everyone. I'm Jana Robinson with the New Jersey Attorney General's Office. I work in the Office of Public Integrity and Accountability.
Craig McElwee.
Hello, everyone. My name is Craig Mcelwee. I am the acting bureau chief of the Conviction Integrity Bureau for the Suffolk County District Attorney's Office on Long Island in New York. I've been in the position just since October, so it's very nice to meet most of you.
Tom Costello.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Tom Costello. I work in the Wayne County Conviction Integrity Unit in Detroit as an attorney and with Valerie Newman.
Lauren Bordon. Snooze you lose. Kathleen Ratliff.
Hi, I'm Kathleen Ratliff. Excuse me. I'm an analyst with the New Jersey Conviction Review Unit.
Jose Ramos. Walker family, it says. Not sure who that is. Nope. A lot of people watching the hearings. Randy Capone.
Hi, good afternoon. I'm Randy Capone. I'm an assistant district attorney in Harris County, Texas. That is Houston, and I am a member of our Conviction Integrity Division. Good to see everybody and be here today.
Jesse.
Good afternoon. My name is Jessie McGuire. I'm an assistant state's attorney in the Cook County State's Attorney's Office.
Keith Satterwhite. Oh, Keith, if you're there, you're muted. Okay, Cynthia Garza.
Hi, everyone. I'm Cynthia Garza. I'm the chief of the Dallas County Conviction Integrity Unit in Texas. Nice to be here.
Just a couple more here. Rion Moore. Rion, I think you're muted. Nope. Oh, okay. Okay. Try and last I have Christine Mumma.
Hi, I'm Christine Mumma. I'm the executive director of the North Carolina Center on Actual Innocence, now expanding into South Carolina. Sorry, I don't have any video, but I am listening to you while driving.
Great. Well, welcome and welcome everybody. And Val, you're right. This is the largest group we've had, and I attribute that entirely to our guest today, Bill Brooks. So just for those who don't know Chief Brooks, Bill Brooks is the chief of the Norwood, Massachusetts Police Department. He's been an officer for about 40 years and is a graduate of the FBI National Academy. Bill was a member of the Supreme Court Judicial Court Study of Massachusetts Committee on Eyewitness Identifications, and also served on a committee of the National Academy of Sciences report in 2014 that produced the Identifying the Culprit, Assessing Eyewitness Identification. Bill presents nationally on eyewitness identification issues to judges, prosecutors, police, pretty much anybody who'll listen, I think. And I'm sure he's presented in probably every state in the union. Chief Brooks was the 2012 recipient of the Innocence Network's Champion of Justice Award and also received the Civil Rights Award for individual achievement from the International Association of Chiefs of Police in 2015. He has served as the president of the Massachusetts Chief of Police Association in 2016 and currently sits on the board of directors of the International Association of Chiefs of Police. We are very, very grateful, Bill, today for your time. I know that a lot of you have experience with eyewitness identification issues. I've asked Chief Brooks to kind of pitch his presentation fairly broadly. If you have questions for Chief Brooks, since we have so many on the call, rather than unmute and ask, I just ask that you send it to me in the chat and I'll make sure we get it addressed. So I'm handing over to Chief Brooks.
Well, thanks, Marissa, and thank you all for taking the time to be here and to listen to me. I can't believe Valerie's actually going to attend for a third time. That's amazing all by itself. And it's nice to see Marissa, who I've known for many, many years, and as a friend, and see Lisa Kavanaugh, and hear about people from Middlesex County. Although I'd rather be, some of you from San Diego, I'd rather be there. But I'm stuck here in Norwood. Norwood will eventually become famous around the country. It is the place where the Moderna coronavirus vaccine is being manufactured, which has been kind of, we haven't actually looked to publicize, honestly, but I think at some point that'll come out. But in any event, I'm going to get into the presentation. I'm going to do a share my screen, which will be a somewhat new experience for me. So in just a minute, I'm going to flip that up so you can see that instead of me, which would be better for you. I guess if you just have a piece of paper and a pen in front of you, there are going to be some times I'm going to say, you know, hey, write this down or put down what you think or whatever. And it might be easier if you have just a single sheet of paper and a pen in front of you. So now let me see if I can do the share my screen. And hopefully what you'll see, if I do this right.
Perfect.
Yeah, so you see, all right, so we'll go through these slides. What you'll be seeing is a slide and hearing my voice, and that'll be better than looking at me. That's just a recruitment photo for my department. My department's much larger than that, but that's us doing a recruitment photo for our last exam. So in any event, let me see if I can, okay, I get the hang of this. So, you know, just to kind of set the table, what most of you know is that eyewitness identification is at the heart of many erroneous convictions around the United States. And we get the best data really from the Innocence Project, because they not only work to exonerate innocent people, but they also then take the data from that and try to figure out why that person was in prison in the first place. And these numbers are updated periodically, and quite frankly, I may be one or two shy, but it gives you an idea of how many people have been exonerated through DNA. And of course, the key here is that over 70% of them, 70% of those cases had eyewitness identification as a major role in the problems in that particular case. And I think of note is that 25% of those cases had more than one identifying witness who picked the same innocent guy, which I think when we talk later about police procedure and the way that the police can minimize error, I think that becomes even more important. How do you have multiple witnesses in a case all pick the guy who had nothing to do with it? And I think in most cases, and I would make the point that we're not talking here about police misconduct, we're talking about protocols that don't sufficiently safeguard the witness's memory. We don't treat memory like a crime scene, you know. So in any event, we'll be talking about that a little bit later. As far as the overall numbers go, and I heard some folks here from state of Michigan. As you probably know, the Michigan School of Law maintains the national database of exonerations, and the numbers are much, much higher than what you see in front of you about DNA. That database, which you can find online, tracks all exonerations in all manners, and of course the numbers are much, much higher. So the DNA exonerations are the tip of the iceberg. There's a point that I always make with police audiences, and it's worth noting, is that not only does the Innocence Project take a look at how the innocent person ended up in prison, but they also take a look at the guilty guy and figure out what he was doing when he was on the street when the wrong guy was in prison. So in about 40% of their cases, the DNA that implicated, exonerated the innocent person, in many cases uploaded into CODIS to identify the true offender. And about 40% of the cases, they can identify the true offender in these cases and see that these people were convicted of many, many other crimes, mostly violent crimes, while the wrong guy sat in prison. And again, those are the numbers that are on the screen. No surprise to anyone that these are bad guys who are out doing violent crime while the wrong guy sat in prison. So what's eyewitness identification? What are we really talking about here? And what we're talking about, and just excuse me 1 second. Well, I just discovered how to mute myself while I clear my throat. It's a major accomplishment. So, you know, what is this evidence that we're really dealing with? And I want you to just pause for a minute and think a little bit about it, and that the so-called match to memory task is not an easy one for people, and it's not an easy one for the criminal justice system to grapple with. All right, so obviously what we're relying on here is the observation of a witness, an observation of the witness of the offender's face. And then we want to use that information to see if we've got the right guy. Now, so it's not physical evidence, obviously, but it's actually not even like traditional memory evidence. Typically, you talk to a witness and you say, what'd you see? And well, I heard shots and I saw this guy in a green hoodie and he ran down the street and he got in a blue car and they took off and took a right at the red light. And all of those things, that description is like factual, right? You know that the hoodie was green and the car was blue and it took her right at the red light. And there were obviously times when, well, it wasn't really green, it was gray, but the lighting was bad. But you get kind of a sense, and when you look at an episodic memory, that you have a sense for what happened because the witness can recite it. A witness reciting, well, he was a white male in his 30s, isn't really going to move the ball down the field an awful lot, right? It might eliminate African American and Hispanic people, but the witness telling us it was a white guy in his 30s isn't really going to help us identify the person, and it's really not going to tell us if we've got the right guy. So what the police have done is we conduct this match to memory task, which, so you've got the witness with the recollection of the offender's face. We take a photograph of our suspect, we display it to the witness, and we ask them to match that to their memory. It's not an easy thing to do. In a show up, of course, it's a one-on-one display, and we'll be talking about that. And with photo arrays, we give them some choices, but we're still essentially asking them to see if they can spot the guy. And it's, again, it's not an easy task. And quite frankly, it's not the kind of task that we can test, right? So it's not like you've got a shell casing and you get a result from NIBIN and it tells you it matches to a particular gun and a ballistician matches it up. And then the defense has an expert that says, well, no, that evidence really not so. There's really no way for us to test this. Now, it could be that the defendant alibis, or there's some other information that, shows that he's innocent, and then we can show that the information is not correct. But honestly, even sometimes juries kind of discard that stuff because they put so much weight in this match to memory test that we run witnesses through. So just have that kind of in the back of your mind. This is an oddity kind of in the human experience. It's kind of an oddity in the criminal justice system. There was a piece of research done a while back, and it was survey based, where they went to prosecutors and said, how many of your prosecutions have been based heavily on eyewitness identification? And the number that they come up with was about 3%. Kind of interesting. So it's not something the criminal justice system sees a lot. And I think my next slide. All right, so let me just kind of make this point before we go on to the next. So I just want you to kind of think about what I just said, in that if eyewitness identification plays a major role in about 3% of criminal prosecutions, and think about your own experience and see if that's the case. And then the previous slide that said that it was present in over 70% of wrongful convictions. This is kind of the ultimate low frequency, high risk event in the criminal justice system. When you talk about risk management, people talk about the greatest risk lies in what you do seldom, but which carries high risk. With the police, it's arson ball shootings, right? Believe it or not, regardless of what you heard, police actually don't shoot people very often. But when we do, the stakes are enormously high. And there's great risk that attaches to that. Same thing with high-speed pursuit. There's great risk. It's a low-frequency event. And as a result, it's kind of a high-risk situation. So is the case with eyewitness identification, which is found in many wrongful convictions, yet few criminal prosecutions around the country. Now, you might have seen this video. As a matter of fact, my mouse is not responding to it. Oh, there we go. So you might have already seen this video. And I'll disclose right up front that some of the slides and displays and videos are stolen. I have taken them from other presenters, oftentimes, usually in exchange for something that I have that they like. So if you've seen this video before, it's kind of been around for a few years. It's the first time you're going to use your pen and paper. When I click on the basketball, you're going to see 6 college students playing basketball, which sounds pretty vanilla, but there's actually 2 basketballs in the video. And of the 6 students, 3 are in black t-shirts and 3 are in white t-shirts. I want you to count the passes. Now, I'll make it easy. Only count the passes among the kids in the white t-shirts, and bounce passes don't count. Okay, bounce passes don't count. Count all of the passes among the kids in the white t-shirts, and we'll see what your answer is at the end. Now, if you would, just if you write that number of passes on your sheet of paper. So the good thing about Zoom is that I don't have to leave Norwood to talk to you all, although I like I said before, I'd rather be in San Diego. The bad is that it's kind of hard to get the interactive experience that I'd normally see in the classroom. So I typically ask an academy class, for instance, how many of you saw fewer than 11 passes? How many of you saw 12? How many of you saw 13? And we kind of go through the numbers up till about 20 or so. And we get various responses. And you may have seen really anywhere from probably 10 to 16 or so passes. But that's not the idea of the video. The idea of the video is, did you see anything else? You see anything else within the frame? And I'm just going to, once more, all I'm telling you this time is don't pay attention to the number of passes, don't count them. Just sit back and watch the video. All I've changed is the instruction for you. And what you should see in just a minute is from the right side of the screen, you'll see a 6-foot-tall black gorilla who walks smack dab in the middle of the picture, beats his chest, and walks off the other side. Now, I'll admit, the first time I saw this video, I did not see the black gorilla. I was so intent on counting the passes, in other words, I was distracted, that I missed the gorilla. That's hard for me to tell how many of you saw it and how many of you didn't, but I bet probably a lot of you did not see the gorilla. This is called inattentional blindness. It's kind of a distraction effect, a selective attention effect, if you will. And we'll circle back to this later when we talk about weapon focus when you're dealing with an armed robbery case where you've got a witness. And as prosecutors, as you look at your cases, I bet a lot of you have had this, you get a really good description of the gun, not so much on the offender's face. And that's not at all unusual. And that's weapon focus. That's because your witness became focused on one aspect of the movie, if you will, to the elimination of other important information. These first few tasks are really just to kind of demonstrate some of the things we'll be talking about and some of the problems with eyewitness memory. So this one, it's not a test. I'm just going to tell you what's going to happen. In fact, I'll narrate it as we go. And what you should see here is a scene from a college campus. There's no sound. And you see that this guy on the left with the map is asking this gentleman for directions. What you're going to see in a minute is other students will pass through, the students will switch, and now the gentleman with the white hair is talking to a completely different person and has no idea that that's what occurred. This is an effect called change blindness. And in a minute, his wife or his colleague steps into the frame. She is not, by the way, tipping him off that something's happened. She doesn't realize it either. And then this experiment, like many of these conducted on a college campus, in 50% of the cases, the individuals did not realize a change had occurred. And if you want to have some fun, so tonight when you go home, have a glass of wine, turn on your computer and Google change blindness. And there's some really funny videos on some of the tricks that have been played on people's minds. Sometimes in a criminal case, and think about this, maybe you've had such a case, the clerk at the local stop and rob calls 911, says, I've just been robbed. He's got his cell phone, he's talking to the dispatcher, and the second half of the call you hear, hey, wait a minute, you're standing across the street at a bus stop. And the police kind of converge on the bus stop and draw guns, and they do a show up on the guy at the bus stop. I've been a policeman a long time, as Marissa said, and most bad guys don't rob a place and then go to the bus stop. But what sometimes happens is a witness's mind will make that jump, will make that link. And it's not based in fact, but they just have the perception that that guy at the bus stop is the person that robbed them. And if you were to interrogate them, they just would not believe that they could be wrong in that. So change blindness is sometimes an issue in criminal cases, but moreover, it kind of demonstrates, that our human memory and our reaction to prompts that we see in front of us, stimuli, are not always accurate. So if we had a, let me see if I can. Give me 1 second while I do a repair. And
so Bill, I have the PowerPoint up on my computer. If you want me to do that, just let me know.
Well, let me just see if I could do it on my end because I have some links to some videos. So So let me get back at this. And do you see the two guys? Okay. So what I'd ask the class here is right away, I want you to shout out the differences between these two photos. So really quickly, like make a list, even if you use initials. What are you seeing in the difference between these two photos? In an academy class, everybody shouts out beard. Somebody else says hair color. Somebody else says dress, background. They take stabs at that. Some people even get into the features, right? Somebody will say eyes or ears, or we hear all this stuff. And I just kind of stand there, and at some point in time, I hear from the back of the room in a very meek voice, is that the same guy? And of course it is. It's two pictures of the same guy. And now that I've said that, look at his lip line, look at his nose, look at his eyes. I don't know what that thing on his forehead is. He's got like this line going across his forehead, got kind of a dent there. The left shot is the mug shot the day this guy was arrested. This is a counterterrorism case from North Carolina, if I'm not mistaken. And that's him on the right, I think, serving his term. I think that was the family Christmas card that year. I'm not sure, but why didn't you see that was the same guy? And people start saying, well, it's the beard, well, his hair color change. It really didn't. It's just the lighting of the photo. But the answer is that you didn't get it because you don't know him. And that's the answer. If I took that slide and walked through his neighborhood, his neighbors would say, well, that's John. And they would know that right away because they know him. Let's try it again and tell me the difference between these two photographs. And everybody, at least everybody in the United States, knows that that's two pictures of Johnny Depp before he went crazy. But anyway, that's two pictures of Johnny Depp at different times of his life, and he's wearing glasses, and you see one he's unshaven, and he's got different hairdos, and the lighting's all different. It's really the same differences as in the first set of photographs, but you see that because you know Johnny Depp. And if you took that to a foreign country where they haven't seen his movies, they would begin to list the differences between those two people. So the point here is that when we talk about recognition memory, we're not talking about the recognition of a person you know. We're talking about seeing a perfect stranger and recognizing him later. So in an academy class, I point out the window and say, one of my sons walks across the parking lot, 200 feet away, and I immediately know that that's Kevin, and I'm kind of confused why he's here at the police academy. But if I saw a perfect stranger under those same conditions, and then you showed me driver's license photos or mugshots a week later, I'm not going to make an identification, because when we talk about recognition memory, we're talking about in criminal applications, the recognition of a person you saw once, and now you're going to match that to a stimulus that's in front of you, and it's very unlikely under those conditions you're going to get an identification. So
Bill, let me ask a question. So Adele put a question in the chat that you asked us to look for differences. So were we primed to look for differences opposed to similarities based on your question?
I think, in other words, a question, if I asked you to recount similarities, would more people find them? Yeah, that would defeat the purpose of me showing that slide.
Fair enough. Okay. I'm
trying to suck you in to spotting the differences, and people do spot the differences. And the exercise really is and I'd say this to a class, whenever I do a class, by the way, I've been to 29 states and Canada now, I always leave them a link to my materials, and they can have everything that I have. And I always say, if you're going to teach, this is how you present it. And instead of me just throwing it up there, I give them a prompt. I give them kind of an exercise, which is find the differences. That's really the only purpose behind that. And they find a million differences. Here's another one that I think is kind of neat. I stole this from a researcher, Jim Lampinen from Arkansas. So you see a whole bunch of pictures, and I do the math here. I think it's 40 photographs. And I ask you, well, do you see the same person repeated? And if I gave you time with these photographs actually cut up, which is how the exercise is done, and I asked you to make little stacks of them, how many people do you think are actually pictured in those 40 photographs? And this experiment is done over and over and over, and it's very common for people to make about 8 different stacks of people based on those photographs. But the answer to the drill is 2. All of those photographs are actually only 2 different people. They're just taken at different angles with different hairdos and that sort of thing. So when we're dealing with people we don't know, we have a hard time, even when we have the chance to study them and move the photos around, we have a hard time spotting that. So there's guy number 1. Excuse me. And there's guy number 2. Now that I've given it away and I've isolated the people that don't belong from the people who do, now you can see the similarities. But it's interesting that even when people are allowed to stare at the photo, they struggle. Oh, here's another one. So you see kind of a, well, we'll call that a photo rate on the bottom, photos 1 through 10. And this is not a robber who pointed a gun at you and was out the door in under 30 seconds, typical armed robbery. I'm actually going to let you stare at that guy, the offender in the top photo, and now match him to the photos 1 through 10 in the array. Now in an academy class, and if we had more time, I'd give you more time. I'm just not inclined to do that with you guys. So make a pick. So where do you see him? Which one is he? Now, it's not that easy. You're probably struggling trying to find him in those photographs to figure out which one he is. And of course, here we'll kind of delve into the none of the above answer. He's not depicted. But some people do pick a number 1 through 10, and even with that, they kind of struggle at it. I'll give you an easier exercise. You see this guy in the photo array. Now, I'll tell you that he's there. But even though you get a chance to stare at him and look at a photo, look at him, look at a photo, go back and forth and back and forth, you're still gonna struggle. To give you an idea how difficult it is for a witness who got a fleeting glance of someone who then ran away, particularly if the conditions are not good. So I'll give you the answer here. He's number 7.
Yeah.
So that's him. And some of you got that, and some of you would have if I gave you more time. But again, this is just to demonstrate the difficulty of that match to memory task. So the stages of memory, and this isn't super important, but it's interesting to understand. These are the 3 stages recognized by researchers and scientists. Encoding is the mind intaking information. So we've been using the stop and rob armed robbery. So this is the guy who walks into the convenience store and says, I'll have a pack of Marlboros. In Massachusetts, all criminals smoke Marlboros. I don't know why that is, but I can tell you that's true. Clerk turns around with the pack of Marlboros, and they only steal 1 pack. I don't know why it's not 2, but they're doing a robbery after all. Take as many Marlboros as you can carry. So the clerk makes the observation. Maybe there's some conversation. Maybe he smells something. The bad guy runs away. When he breaks the plane, as they say in football, gets out the door, encoding is stopped, and storage begins. It's the memory of memory, if you will. That's the storage of information in the mind. And all you really have to know about it is that it will degrade, and it will degrade over time, but it will degrade rapidly initially and then level off. So it's really important that the police move quickly here. By the same token, it's important to not jump to conclusions. It's one of the problems with, show-ups, for instance, that occur right afterwards. Okay, so the police, in one regard, are trying to act quickly, and I'm a big believer in show-ups, counter to many of my researcher friends. And why do show-ups oftentimes work? And they oftentimes work because they're happening so soon after the crime's been committed, when the memory is extremely fresh. A photo array shown, a week later, you've got serious degradation of memory. And then retrieval, when we ask the witness to retrieve the information. And there's 2 kinds, recall and recognition. And again, I'd ask the class, which is easier? And the answer is recognition. If I were to give you a test at the end of this, and I give you the choice between fill in the blanks or multiple choice, everyone would want multiple choice. Why? Because recognition is easier than recall. So that means looking at a photo array or attending a show up should be easier than putting together a composite sketch or giving a verbal description. And if you think about your cases, that's probably true. The scientists and researchers talk about the factors in eyewitness identification in 2 groups called variables. Estimated variables are beyond the control of the police. System variables are within our control and are, for the most part, the protocols and procedures used by the police. So quickly, I'm going to run through some estimated variables. There's all sorts of research on this stuff, and most of it, I think, is intuitive. And you'll remember some cases where they worked with you or against you. So exposure duration is the amount of time that the offender is in the view of the witness. The 7-Eleven robbery, where the viewing time is 30 seconds, the exposure duration is poor. Yet in that same robbery that kind of goes bad and the store clerk is taken hostage for 3 hours, the exposure duration is much better. Makes sense. Retention interval is the amount of time between the observation and when the police offer the stimulus. So again, the show up that's conducted 20 minutes later, it has good retention interval. Photo array 2 weeks later, not quite so much. Lighting and distance are always kind of grouped together, so I use this shot. Phone poles, people who have investigated traffic crashes, most people know that phone poles are about 100 feet apart in most municipalities. So this photograph, let's take a look at the second phone pole. You might think that a person standing there you might recognize, but in reality, they're 200 feet away at night. And under those viewing conditions, honestly, we would not conduct a photo array at all. It's just, there's research that shows that observations out that far, you cannot discern facial features. And although you may have an impression or an image, it's not founded on good encoding conditions. So, and these are, I think, are the two ultimates. So when people get to be 200 feet away, and I got involved with a case here in Massachusetts where you had 4 witnesses, all of whom saw exactly the same thing from the same place. 3 could not make an identification. 1 did, and it was at midnight, 180 feet away, and the guy was convicted in that case, later exonerated, but after serving 36 years in prison. So lighting and distance, I think, are kind of absolutes. If it's pitch black, you're not going to have an eyewitness identification, and if the viewing conditions are from too far, you don't have it either. So weapon focus, and I mentioned this before, this is that kind of selective attention effect where, you're getting robbed by this guy, you're going, oh my God, does that have a bullet in it? It's shaking a little bit. This weapon's going to shoot me. And when it's all over, you don't remember whether that guy, tell me, did he have facial hair? Was he Hispanic or not? You might even be having some trouble remembering that. I'll give you the answer. Weapon focus is more prevalent when the weapon is faced at the witness. If you're a third-party observer and you're not threatened by the weapon, it tends to play less of a role. And the longer the observation, the less weapon focus effect you'll find. All of the research talks about stress. I think of it in terms of fright, that when witnesses are under frightful conditions, again, particularly in low duration events, stress can inhibit memory. Now, stress you can't measure, right? A gun, it's a check the box. Was there a gun? Yes or no? What's the distance? Well, we can measure that. Stress isn't something you can really measure. It's something police should keep in the back of their mind. Prosecutors should kind of keep in the back of their mind. To what extent was there fright by the witness who was making the observation? Some witnesses make a point to look away, and that's an issue, of course. Other people who are frightened beyond wit's end make a point to make good observations. So I wouldn't discount a witness who's frightened, but it can be a factor. There's all sorts of research around the use of disguises. This is from a Massachusetts website that I helped put together years ago called massmostwanted.org, where the police can post surveillance images of people committing crimes. This has not been a good year. Most people are wearing masks. And but even before the masks, bank robbers have always worn a cap with a visor and sunglasses. And this is extraordinarily useful in criminals being able to escape identifications. They've done research on this. One particular piece of research where they showed a point of view video of a person being robbed. Witnesses, quite honestly, only 45% of them picked out the true offender from a photo array they saw following the video. But only 27% picked the guy out when they just put a Navy watch cap on the offender in the holdup video. So just wearing a cap, even without a visor, where the only feature covered would be the hairline, really dropped the ability of witnesses to make identifications. So I've had cases where somebody drew in a fake teardrop tattoo. We've had multiple bank robberies where people are wearing sunglasses. I never understood how bad guys could pull their t-shirt up over their nose, do a robbery and expect to get away with it. But now I understand fully. It's very, very effective. Then there are biases, and probably the best known is own race bias, sometimes called cross-racial effect. And there's also some research now around own age bias. And I've seen this where older people have trouble identifying kids, and kids have trouble identifying older people. But there's all sorts of research on own race bias, where people are asked to identify people of other races. And in the United States, it tends, my opinion is that there is more difficulty Caucasians recognizing African Americans and the other way around because we're a predominantly white society. Research shows, however, that this can be tempered if you have a witness who grew up in a minority community and has spent his whole life around African Americans or Latinos. So you have to know a little bit about your witness, number one. And number two, this isn't a disqualification. I can't say that the witness, the white witness who picked an African American suspect is wrong any more than I get to vouch for the white witness who picked the white suspect, right? So we know that this is a factor, and in Massachusetts, there's a jury instruction around it, which in every cross-racial case, the judge must give that instruction. But it doesn't mean that your witness is wrong, but it's something to keep in mind. So from the police end, and we're going to kind of leave estimated variables for a minute, but I tell police officers when they have a case, kind of run the checklist. Gee, I've got poor lighting, and the guy pointed a gun at the witness, and the witness or the victim in my case is a different race, and talked about how frightened they were. So, you know, you kind of stack those up and you say, gee, I got a problematic eyewitness case here. And by the same token, maybe you don't have so many factors and you think, well, maybe I stand a better chance. I'm gonna skip this, but I'm just gonna give a mention. If you Google, and by the way, all this stuff is on my police department website, and I'll talk about it at the very end. But there's a two-part series from 60 Minutes that now is about 10 years old, showing Jennifer Thompson, who's a rape victim who identified the wrong man in her case. And he served 11 years in prison. And I presented with Jennifer and Ronald Cotton several times. In fact, the police detective as well, who's a great guy. But this is very interesting for you to sit and watch. It's two 12-minute segments. Very, very effective training aids if you do speaking on this, but it's just interesting for you to watch. And her book is Picking Cotton. His name's Ronald Cotton. He's a black guy. She's a white rape victim. And she identified him. And so the name of the book is Picking Cotton. It's an excellent book. We're going to talk a little bit about system variables now. And these are the techniques used by the police. That's my old department, Wellesley. Matt Farwell there, talking to a couple of college students. For patrol, just really quickly, these are just some good guidelines for patrol. Separate your witnesses, which they're taught in the academy. Don't repeat to one witness what another witness told you. Witness number one talks about a red getaway car. You don't ask witness number two, did you see the red getaway car? But you can ask, do you see how the offender left? You get the same information, you just asked a question in a different way. Avoid leading questions. Block radio transmissions when you're talking to witnesses. And we teach officers to just cover that lapel mic to your radio so that the witness doesn't hear that while you're conducting an interview, other officers are chasing somebody through backyards. You don't want that in the witness's mind when you conduct your show up. And then cognitive interview, and I'm not going to get into it in great depth. I think Marissa just actually attended a class on it. She could probably, her next presentation will be in cognitive interview maybe, but it's basically taking the witness to a quiet place, establishing rapport, not asking leading questions, and asking open-ended narrative statement rather than prompting with questions. You know, start wherever you'd like, place yourself back at the scene, close your eyes and picture yourself standing there. Now simply tell me what you remember. And when the witness stops talking, you ask a prompting question like, then what? What else? As opposed to leading the witness. The officer who shows up with the clipboard who says, okay, how tall was he? How much did he weigh? What color was his hair? You're asking the witness to recall information in the order in which it's on your form, which is not the best way. You want the witness to recount information as it comes to their mind. So the types of procedures typically around eyewitness identification, I teach 5 in class. We're going to talk about show-ups and photo arrays. A field view is a non-suspect procedure where, you know, you've got a woman who was assaulted right outside a gym where a bunch of kids are inside playing. And she describes a teenager that beat her up and took her purse. Would the police walk into the gymnasium and kind of walk around with the witness just saying, if you see anybody familiar, let me know? That's a field view. It's done without a suspect. Live lineups, you don't see many of them anymore. I'm kind of a believer in live lineups. I did a lot when I was a detective. And then voice identifications, which can be difficult and problematic, but I also did voice identification lineups in mass bank robbery cases with some success. I'm not going to go into those here, and I'll field questions from you later, or you can contact me if you have questions about that. but we're going to focus on show-ups and photo arrays. The general best practices laid down. Did somebody have a question?
Nope, go ahead. It was just feedback.
Okay. So when I served on the SJC committee that Marissa mentioned, we came out with general best practices for the police. That's kind of a list of them. Every department should have a written policy. I just talked about those next few about how you manage witnesses. Have a standard for showing a suspect. Obviously, read instructions to witnesses from cards and forms, and I'll talk about that in a minute. We don't ever just tell the witness what we want them to know. We read from prepared text. Officers carry show-up cards in their pockets, and we use a form that's signed by the witness and officer every time we do a photo array. Do a report on every identification attempt. Police are pretty good about writing a report when they get an identification, but they sometimes fail to write a report when they don't get an identification. I'm going to talk later about composites, sketches, and mugshots.
Why is it more important now to have Black doctors?
She muted everybody.
Bill, can you just mute? Yep, there you go. We're good.
My back. The other thing I want to mention, this is really important. Sorry about that. Avoid successive identification attempts. And if you're working conviction integrity, I bet you've got cases like this, where the same suspect was exposed to a victim or a witness more than once. And this is kind of a nuance that I don't think a lot of people see. There should be an absolute prohibition to showing the same suspect to a witness more than once. If you do a show up and your witness doesn't make an identification, you do not put that witness in a photo array a couple of days later. So I'll give you a quick, and I don't want to run out of time here. Marissa, what's my hard stop? Is that 3:15 on my end?
Yep.
Okay.
So we're, about 15 to 18 minutes, but I think people would forgive you if you went a few minutes over.
So I'm sorry, say that once more.
I said it's 2:57, so about another 20 minutes, but I think people would forgive you if you went a few minutes longer.
I'm doing my best to pick up the pace, but this illustration I think is interesting. We had an armed robbery, and next town over stopped the suspect shortly after the armed robbery, and I think we had like white guy in a hoodie, for robbery, not real good, somebody in his 30s, not a very specific description. And the next department over from us stopped a guy with a long criminal record, who was lying to the police, and sometimes criminals do that. And they called us and asked if we wanted to do a show up, and we sent a radio car over with the witness. And I got there 10 minutes or so later, and I arrived, and I see the bank teller in the back of the car. She's staring out the window. Standing on the sidewalk are 3 people in civilian clothes. I would later find out 2 were plainclothes officers, and the guy in the middle was a suspect. And she's kind of staring at him. I'll circle back to this too, but good identifications happen rapidly, like within seconds. So I walked up to one of the officers. I said, "What's going on?" And they said, "She's looking at him." Now, this goes back a number of years. I said, "How long's this been going on?" "Well, we've been here about 5 minutes." "Well, we're all done then. If we've been here a couple of minutes, we're all done." So we took that apart and sent the witness back to the bank. And the guy was innocent. I think he had nothing to do with it. He was just lying to the police, and we sent him on his way. And an officer saw me a couple of days later. And he says, "Hey, can I ask you a question? Like, are we going to put him in a photo array?" And I was like flooded by all these things I wanted to explain to the officer. And I took a breath to answer him, and the cop said, "I bet you'd pick him." I said, "I know she'd pick him. I just don't know whether he robbed the bank." Right? You put that guy in a photo array, and is she going to spot him? And the answer is yes, but she's not going to be able to discern that she's recognized him because she stared at him the day that she was robbed, and that he was the guy in the show up. And there's no way for us to tell that. So, you do a show up and the witness doesn't pick him, you are done. Now, he might be your suspect, and you might get him on DNA or prints or ballistics or whatever, but you are all done showing that face of that witness. You're through. So you put all of your efforts in the first attempt, and then you are done. So let's talk a little bit about, we're going to talk a little bit about show-ups and what the rules are for show-ups. They should be done soon after the crime, and there's kind of a line drawn by police, and it's in the SJC report. that they be done within 2 hours. Honestly, most show-ups I've seen are done within 30 minutes. The rapidity of the show-up is seen to offset any suggestiveness. And of course, they are suggested because you're only showing one person. But again, you're acting so rapidly that you're dealing with a very, very fresh memory. And there are good ways to do show-ups. And I want to talk about that. It allows for the efficient capture of the subject, getting him off the street. And quite frankly, once we do that, we stop stopping innocent people. So that's helpful. But if the person's innocent, like our guy in the bank robbery case, he can be on his way and he's kind of instantly exonerated. But you still have to strive for being non-suggestive. So you never do it in a cell. You never do it with the guy sitting in the back of a radio car, kind of staring out through the bars. And you always turn the suspect so his cuffs are away from the approaching radio car. So maybe not like that. What you would do is you would pull this guy away, you would pull him to another location, or you dismiss the police. I heard one by my department. If this goes back a couple of years, they were getting ready to do a show up, and it was textbook. I could tell by the radio traffic. The officer came on the air and said, "Stand by while I instruct the witness," and then he's reading from his show up card. Then you hear a radio transmission. He says, "Okay, I'm underway," and the officer who's holding the suspect says, "Just give me a minute to step around the corner." And he took the suspect from something that probably looked a little bit like this and stepped around the corner so that when the witness came up the road, there was just one officer standing with the subject who was uncuffed. Got an identification. He was clearly the guy anyway. And so a little bit of effort on the part of the police to be non-suggestive. It's preferred to transport the witness to the subject, not the other way around. We have standard show-up instructions in Massachusetts that we read from a card. I'm not going to read them all to you, but the way that they're framed and being on the SJC study group allowed me to write these instructions, and then they were kind of mandated around the state. And it got me to play a role in that, which worked out. Usually the court looks at what the police are doing and tell us whether or not we're doing a good job. This was a case where I got to kind of be in on the ground floor, and the show-up instructions that we wrote in the report are what the police use across Massachusetts. So the first two instructions are you're going to be asked to view some people. And the second one, the person you saw may or may not be among the people you're about to view. Now, why do we say some people and among the people? There's actually research on this that talks about the additional opportunity instruction. That when a witness believes that if they don't make a selection, they'll have other opportunities, that takes the edge off. And research has shown that it decreases the amount of error while not affecting the number of accurate identifications. So the fact that these two instructions are the first two, and they both talk about plural suspects, is by design. It's just as important to clear the innocent. We're going to continue to investigate, even if you identify. We're going to ask you how certain you are. If you select somebody, we can't answer questions for you. Don't talk to the press or the other witnesses. So those are the instructions, essentially. And again, we read from a card. We read from a card for the same reason we read Miranda warnings from a card. It can come in as evidence. There's no question what the officer said. So you stop the cruiser prior to arrival. You read the witness the instructions, ask if they've got any questions. Said to the officers, it's show up, not a drive-by. You pull right up to the curb, let the witness see. Note the witness's reaction. Ask the witness how certain you are. And the question we ask is, without using a numeric scale, how certain are you? And then you note what they say. Now, I think there's a video here that I'm going to skip in the interest of time, but I can show you how to get to it. And that's one of the slides from it. The other thing that I'll point, let me see if I have that. All right. The other thing I'll point out that we now do is my entire department has issued work phones, right? We issued iPhones to the whole department. We video record show-ups. And we had a beautiful one just last week. And since we started doing this, the evidence has been so good. Where it's basically a video. It's a minute, 30 seconds. And the video it shows the officer's speedometer, right? Because he's turned on the video and he's just holding the thing in front of him, the phone. Well, he reads the show-up instructions. And then he says, "Are you ready?" And the witness says, "Yeah." And then you see him kind of drive around the corner and he holds the phone up so you can see what the show-up looks like. And you hear the witness say, "Oh, that's the guy. That's the guy I chased. That's the guy who stole from the store." So you've got the whole thing. We've got a minute, 30-second video. And you capture the identification, you capture the assessment of certainty, you get to see what the show-up looked like, And it's basically, it's a cop of an iPhone, not that tough. And what I tell police is, you know, a good video recording of your identification procedure will keep you off the stand in a motion to suppress because they already know what happened, right? So we're going to talk a little bit about photographic arrays next. And this is kind of the standard photo array where you've got 6 suspects, and that's the national standard. In Massachusetts, we use 8. We use an oversized array just because if the judge gets a motion to suppress and he's looking at the array and he says, I don't understand why you included this guy. This guy doesn't have facial hair, right? Or this guy is obviously Latino and the other ones aren't. All of a sudden, you've got an array that's too small. So in Massachusetts, we always show 8. It's just what we do. The best practices are always use a current photo of the suspect, and that's kind of a best practice for the police. You know, you don't just run the guy's information, pull his driver's license photo and pull that from the file. In Massachusetts, they let you renew every other driver's license online, and they're good for 5 years. So the driver's license photo could be 10 years old. So a little bit of diligence in making sure that your suspect looks like the photo you're going to use is important. You select fillers by fitting them to the description of the offender. Your fillers do not need to look like your suspect. They should merely fit the description of your offender. We're simply providing a selection. You're not trying to fool your witness. And photo arrays that sometimes the police call too good, where everybody looks like their brothers, are actually not that helpful. There should be at least 5 fillers and only 1 suspect. So an array of 6 is not 3 suspects, 3 fillers. It's always only 1 suspect. And like I said, in Mass, we use 8. We'll talk about blind administration in just a bit. In Massachusetts, we show photographs sequentially. And because we're showing the photographs one at a time, it brings up the issue of the second lap. What does that mean? So I'm showing photo number 6, the witness says nope. Photo number 7, nope. Photo number 8, nope. And I lay the stack down. And the witness either says, can I see number 3 again? Or can I see all the photos again? And we have a rule in Massachusetts, it's not written in the instructions, where we say, we can show you the entire array one more time. If we put in the instructions that we're going to show the array twice, witnesses would not pick from the first round. They would wait, and they'd wait till the second round. And research has shown that identifications from the first lap have a higher accuracy rate than the second lap. So we want the identification in the first lap, but if they don't pick anybody and they really want to see them again, understanding that there's some risk, we will show it, but only one more time. We ask about the statement of certainty, much as we do with show-ups. Shuffle between witnesses. So if you've got the bank teller who's seeing a photo array on Wednesday and her best friend is going to see it on Friday, again, we use a verbal instruction. The order of the photos you're about to see is not the same as the order of the photos we showed your friend. Yeah, obviously submit your paperwork and whenever practicable, video or audio tape, a photo array or lineup. So how do you pick fillers? Here's your description. She was a young white woman. Her hair was red and wavy. She had kind of a round face. Here's your suspect. How do you pick a photo array? How do you pick fillers? So there's the photo array. So what do you think? Well, at a glance, it probably looks fine. But you take the offender description and apply it to the fillers. She had red wavy hair. So only 2 have red wavy hair. And would you argue that they both have a round face? All of a sudden, you've got a problem with your array, right? There's a problem here. So applying offender description to your fillers is important. If the witness is thinking, gee, I told the cops, you know, red wavy hair and a round face, and she sees this photo array, she's going to be selecting from the 2 photos which one looks best to me, and you don't want that. This is an actual case. You can Google the name. Sex assault, if I'm not mistaken, in San Diego. And this was the photo array. And when you look at it at a glance, a lot of people go, well, yeah, well, bunch of white guys. But the offender description was a white male with a goatee. Now, how many have goatees? Well, only 3. Who has the best goatee? Number 4. She picked number 4. Number 4 was innocent. But number 4 stood out. He was the guy, he was the best white male with a goatee. And even though he was innocent, he was selected, served time in prison, if I'm not mistaken. San Diego prosecutor can correct me if I'm wrong there. Here's another one that came out recently. This was in Portland, Oregon, if I'm not mistaken. The guy on the left is a bank robbery suspect. None of the witnesses described facial tattoos, So the police photoshopped off the facial tattoos to make them look more like their description. Now this went through a motion to suppress, and I want to say the trial judge suppressed it, the appellate court let it back in, and I've lost track of it. But what if you have an oddity in your suspect photograph? What do you do with that? I tell police, like rule number one, you never touch the suspect. If you've got a Photoshop tattoos onto your fillers, have at it, but don't do anything to your suspect photograph. If you've got like a neck tattoo, what do? Well, you crop the photo so the neck doesn't show. If he's got a teardrop tattoo on one cheek, Photoshop the teardrop tattoo on. That's fine. But stay away from, don't manipulate the photograph of your suspect. Photo array instruction form, I'm going to show you where to get that, but this runs pretty much like the show-up card. In the interest of time, I'm not going to read it to you. But the three most important instructions for the police to give is the suspect or the offender may or may not be here. It's just as important to clear the innocent as it is to implicate the guilty. And regardless of whether you make a selection, we'll continue to investigate. So of the 12, I think there's 12 that we read to people before we ask, do you have any questions? Those are the top three. And I will show you how to get to this stuff at the very end. I'm a big sequential guy, real quick test. 1 through 5 is the top row. 6 through 10 is the second row. Just pick the right penny. Right? You guys are prosecutors like cops. You've seen plenty of pennies in your career. It's how you were paid in the first few years. You know what a real penny looks like, which one's a real penny. And I do this in class and people start shouting out numbers and all that. And again, the answer to the question is the real penny's not there. But many of you would have made choices or did make choices. And whether you realize it or not, what you did is you eliminated the ones you didn't like. You narrowed the field and you picked the one that was closest. We don't want to know which photograph looks the most like the offender. We want to know whether or not you recognize the offender. I'm a big sequential guy. I believe that's how photo array should be done. Anyway, this kind of makes that point. This would have bothered you later. That's what a penny looks like. Statement of certainty is emerging as one of the more important parts of eyewitness identification. This is hugely important, that you ask the witness how certain they are immediately when the identification is made. Now, I talked a few minutes ago about blind administration, and again, I don't know if I'm going to have a chance to show you. I'm not going to have a chance to show you the video, but blind administration means that the person showing the photo array to the witness does not know which one is the suspect. And in my department, we just call the radio car in off the road. They go into the public interview room. The detective reads the instructions, says, do you have any questions? No, I don't. And leaves the room, leaving the patrol officer with the stack of photos to show the photos one at a time. If an identification is made, let's say the witness at photo number 5 says, wait, that's him. The officer immediately asks, without using a Merrick scale, how certain are you? And they actually write it on the form, although we video record the showing of all photo arrays, so you actually don't even need to do that. Then, by the way, the officer will say, remember, I need to show you the entire array, and he shows the rest of the fillers. And that just means that we've shown the entire array, that we haven't stopped midway through, so we don't get a motion to suppress. It's extremely important. So here's the, sometimes doing a class is like all bad news. Here's the way cases can go wrong. Here's the good news of the day, okay? If the police have used what the researchers call pristine practices, so that's a properly constructed array, in the case of an array, a blind administrator, and the witness is properly instructed, okay? Particularly when you see rapid recognition. And I've seen some research that says, kind of the line is, I've seen some that says under 6 seconds, some says under 10 seconds. That's really important. And the witness expresses high confidence to the blind administrator, not the detective who comes back in the room, but the blind administrator right then and there, when the cop says, without using the Merrick scale, how certain are you? And the witness says, very certain, that's the guy. That if you have those conditions, there's a high likelihood of accuracy. And sometimes when the researchers use numbers, they'll say a witness that's 90% accurate or 90% confident is accurate 90% of the time. It's that important. You don't get this without using the proper protocols. I'm not going to be able to show you that video, but I'm going to show you where to get it on your own. Composites and sketches. Nobody working for me has done a composite in over 12 years. We don't do composites. And this should make the case. I stole this slide from Jim Dysart, who's a researcher from John Jay college in New York City. The reason that slide is helpful because that's all the same offender. This is a serial rapist in California, if I'm not mistaken, at least as I understand the story. And these were composite sketches with the assistance of various of his victims. They're presumably all the same person. And you can see that most of them don't look anything like the others. We don't do sketches and composites at my department at all. Why? And there's research on this. They actually did research where they showed a prompting video, a point of view video of a robbery, something like that. And then they had the control group come back a couple of days later and look at a photo array. But the test group, they had sit down and do a composite sketch with an artist and then come back and see the photo array. And they found lower accuracy by the group that did the composite. Doing the composite actually skews the witness's memory for the original face. And in Jennifer Thompson's case, if you watch that video, she did a composite sketch. She came away from that picturing that composite sketch as what her offender looked like. And there's a confluence of issues here. It's not just, somebody went to prison for a crime he didn't commit because the police didn't use the right instructions. There's oftentimes a confluence of several factors. And in her case, the police didn't have a suspect. They did a composite. They ran the composite. The composite generated several leads. The leads were people who really did look like the composite. They did a simultaneous array so that Jennifer could see all of the photos at once. And she picked the guy who looked the most like the composite. And he did look the most like the composite, except he was innocent. And 2 days later, they showed a live lineup. Now the 5 dudes who were the fillers in the photo array did not come in for the lineup. The fillers were all different. The only guy that was repeated in the 2 processes was Ronald Cotton, and nobody should be surprised that he went to prison. We also don't do mugshot searching, or I do fewer and fewer classes where the cops remember Bonnie Miller, but if you're old enough to remember the Bonnie Miller TV show, it seemed that there was always somebody in the background flipping through a mug book, and they always told them the same thing. When you get done with that, we got more, right? And people would just be flipping the pages of a mug book. Similar to doing a composite, all it does is confuse people and skew the witness's memory for the offender's face. And again, there's research to back that up. That's a new issue. I'm not going to talk about that just now. I'll answer questions later if you have them. After the array, I tell police, build your case around the array. Don't focus your prosecution on it. You should look for corroborating evidence, cell site location information on the offender's phone at the time the crime was committed, search warrant on his home to get the clothing worn on the robbery, that sort of thing. So our website, that's me, that's our governor behind us, by the way. If you go to norwoodpolice.com and go to my bio page, down the bottom, there's a little link that says training materials. And if you go to that, there's a PowerPoint similar to the one you saw. Jennifer Thompson is there, the videos. There's a photo array video, a video I did for the NYPD Academy a few years on live lineups, double blind sequential. The show up video is there. All the materials I use in class are there. That's my contact information. Marissa can shoot that out to you, but that's my email. Or you can go to norwoodpolice.com and click on my bio, and you'll get my link to an email come up, and there's my Twitter handle. So I'm going to stop sharing here and answer any questions. We'll take a look at the chat.
Great.
I know I've run over. Sorry.
First, thank you, Bill. That was just absolutely Herculean being able to get through that concisely as well. So thank you. There's a question here about this. You mentioned before about a statistic of people who participate in a composite are less likely to ID later. Do you happen to know that research off the top of your head? And if not, I'm happy to send it out to folks.
I could probably find it. It was done by Gary Wells. Gary Wells is like the guru in this stuff. He's at Iowa State University. He did a study years ago around composites, and that was the one I'm referring to. You could probably Google Gary Wells composites, and then you'll find that. Okay. If I can find it, I'll send it to you.
And there's just a shout out from Missy O'Connell out in California saying that your expertise was instrumental in helping California pass legislation mandating best practices for eyewitness ID procedures. So that's a major thank you from Missy and everybody in California, it sounds like. Good. And other folks have, as I put in the chat, we are kind of past time, but Chief Brooks is very kindly agreed to stay on for a few more minutes for those who have questions. And you're welcome to just unmute and ask yourself. We will be making the video available as well as the presentation materials later. So don't worry about that. We'll make sure to get that out to folks who are here. So if you have a question, you can put it in the chat. You could raise a hand and I'll find you on the participant screen, or just go ahead and unmute to ask. All different options. Lots of thank yous and great job, Chief Brooks, in the chat right now.
Okay. Well, you're very welcome. Thanks for having me. I was just trying to pull up the website page to show it to you. But anyway, if you just do the norwoodpolice.com and go to the bio page, ask the chief or meet the chief or whatever it says, you should be able to find that. You can use anything that's there. The SJC report, the NAS report is there. Any of the videos, PowerPoints, the Massachusetts Academy lesson plan. And if you have any questions, my email's there, obviously. Shoot me an email. I'm happy to talk to you.
Chief Brooks, I had a question. Do you have an opinion on police departments, I guess, conducting a photo lineup when the person, the victim or a witness, has done their own research on social media and has themselves, they've come across a photo that they say this is the person, and they show it to the police and say this is the person who did whatever crime to me, or that I saw committing a crime. Do you have an opinion on whether the police should conduct a further lineup on their own official lineup, to kind of solidify that?
I do. I have a strong opinion that they should not. This is an ongoing problem. In fact, we're telling witnesses, when we meet them, please don't take leads from other people. Don't let friends text you photographs. Please don't conduct your own investigation. Anytime you are looking at a face, it should be with us. And we're really emphasizing that because it's a bigger and bigger problem. Here's the issue. They kind of do their own searching and they come across a face and they say, gee, I think this is the guy. I'll tell you, when you put them in a photo array, they're going to pick them. All right. And this is kind of the second showing of the suspect. This is the successive identification attempt that I talked about before. And them picking a person from a photo array that they've already sat and stared at on Facebook means nothing. You've got to go with that original view. Now, if it's not police contrived, it's a little bit easier for a prosecutor to get it in, that the police didn't set it up that way. But it's still risky and you have to be careful about it. So, you've got a whole bunch of text messages saying, I think I found the guy. This is definitely the guy. I talked to a friend. He's done this before. He's victimized other women. Ready to see that photo. Okay, here it is. I mean, that's a problem. Now you take that photo of that guy, his driver's license, you put him in a photo array. I tell you, she's going to pick him 95% of the time. But that identification means nothing. You've got to go with the original identification and work with that. That's my opinion.
Perfect. Thank you.
Thanks, Cynthia. Anybody else? Online?
I'm just looking to see.
Adele saying hello. Go ahead. Go ahead and unmute, Adele.
No, I was just, it was great. I thought it was very clear and a lot of useful information, and that's it.
Well, thank you, Adele. I appreciate that. I love talking about this stuff, and an audience that wants to be there, wants to hear me speak, take time out of their busy day. I'm always happy to do it.
Great.
And I would do anything for Marissa, that too, but that's.
I pay him well. Anybody else from folks? Okay, then Chief Brooks, with my extreme gratitude, thank you so much for taking time for us. We're very grateful, not just for your time for us, but of course for what you do for the citizens of Norwood, but all over the state and all over the country for helping to promote best practices among police. It's probably a very lonely time for you sometimes, but we're very, very grateful for all you've done for justice.
My pleasure.
Thank you. And thank you everybody for joining. Remember, we have same time, same channel next month. We will have a whole different program for you. And let us know if there are any questions or suggestions you have for trainings in the meantime. Always happy to have that help. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.